Hey everyone, welcome back to the Forging Indestructible Self-Discipline podcast. I'm glad you're here today because we're talking about something every single person will eventually face, and that is major setbacks in life. Life has a way of knocking all of us down at some point. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's professional. Sometimes it comes from our own mistakes, and sometimes it comes from completely out of nowhere. The difficult truth is that no amount of preparation, intelligence, discipline, or planning can completely protect you from hardship. At some point, something will fail, collapse, fall apart, or simply not work out the way you hoped. The real test of character is not whether you avoid every setback. The real test is whether you can gather yourself and get back up after it happens. One of the biggest mistakes people make after a major setback is believing they are supposed to recover immediately. We live in a culture that glorifies instant comeback stories. People post highlight reels of success after failure and make it seem like they rebuilt their lives overnight. That is usually not reality. Real recovery is often messy, slow, frustrating, and exhausting. If you are in the middle of a difficult season right now, I want you to understand something important. Your first job is not to immediately conquer the world again. Your first job is to stabilize yourself mentally and emotionally. You need to regain your footing. Sometimes that means taking a breath and simply accepting the reality of where you are without allowing it to define who you are. There is a huge difference between accepting reality and surrendering to it, though. Accepting reality means you honestly acknowledge the setback. Surrendering means you stop believing things can improve. Those are not the same thing. Self-discipline requires honesty, but it also requires hope. You cannot rebuild your life if you've already convinced yourself the future is hopeless. Another dangerous trap after failure is turning the setback into your identity. People say things like, "I am a failure," or "my life is ruined." No. You experienced failure. You experienced loss. You experienced disappointment. But those experiences are not your identity. One bad chapter does not erase your value, your abilities, or your future potential. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet are not people who avoided hardship. They are people who kept moving after life knocked them flat on the ground. They learned how to function while disappointed. They learned how to rebuild while exhausted. They learned how to continue while uncertain. That is real toughness. That is real self-discipline. Now here's the part most people do not want to hear. Getting back up usually starts very small. You may not feel motivated. You may not feel confident. You may not even know exactly what to do next. That's okay. Stop focusing on rebuilding your entire life in 1 week. Focus on the next step. Maybe the next step is updating your resume. Maybe it is going for a walk and clearing your head. Maybe it's repairing your sleep schedule. Maybe it's paying one overdue bill. Maybe it is finally making the difficult phone call you've been avoiding. Progress after a setback is often painfully slow in the beginning, but slow progress is still progress. One of the reasons small steps matter so much is because momentum is fragile after failure. If you try to do too much too quickly, you often overwhelm yourself and quit again. But small, consistent actions slowly rebuild confidence. Every completed task sends a signal to your mind that you're still capable of moving forward. You also have to guard your mindset carefully during recovery. And your mind will replay mistakes over and over again. You'll compare yourself to other people who seem further ahead. You will feel embarrassed about where you are. This is where discipline becomes deeply internal. Discipline is not just waking up early or working hard. Discipline is controlling your thoughts enough to keep going when negativity tries to take over. You have to learn how to speak to yourself honestly without destroying yourself mentally. Yes, maybe you made mistakes. Yes, maybe things went badly. But constantly attacking yourself solves nothing. Be accountable without becoming hopeless. Learn from the setback without becoming imprisoned by it. I also think setbacks teach lessons success never could. Hardship exposes weaknesses. It exposes bad habits. It exposes false priorities. It exposes people who disappear when things get difficult. But it also reveals your resilience. It reveals your endurance. It reveals whether your discipline is real or whether it only existed when life felt easy. Some of the most disciplined people I know were forged through incredibly painful seasons. Not only because suffering automatically makes people stronger, but because they chose to keep going through the suffering. They refused to stay down permanently. If you are listening to this right now while going through a difficult season yourself, I want you to remember this. Your life is not over because you experienced a setback. Your future is not destroyed because things fell apart. You may have to rebuild slowly. You may have to adjust your plans. You may have to start over in some areas of your life. But starting over is still movement forward if you refuse to quit. At the end of the day, self-discipline is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is about standing back up one more time than life knocks you down. Some days, you may only move forward by inches. That still counts. Keep moving. Keep rebuilding. Keep believing that another chapter is possible. All right, I want to thank you for listening to the Forging Indestructible Self-Discipline podcast. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who may need encouragement. And until next time, stay disciplined and keep forging yourself into someone stronger than your circumstances.